My name is Andrés Jaque. I'm an architect. I'm the founder of the Office for Political Innovation, which is based both in Madrid and New York. I'm also the Dean of Columbia University Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation. I think we've inherited a world that is both in the intersection of a number of layered ideologies, and not only ideologies, ways of constructing the collective. Colonization, carbonization, extractivism, racism, technocracy, ableism, anthropocentrism, and patriarchy. This is a kind of a layer system that is cracking now. And as architects, our role is to operate in the cracks and push for alternatives to happen. This is very exciting because it's a time that architects are called to reworld other possibilities. And that's something that, for me, is coming directly from a series of, let's say, traditions that we could gather around words like ecology, political ecology, but also queerness, and also, I would say, alternative forms of producing the collective that are not coming from the modern tradition. And that's what makes architecture so exciting now for me. I'm a designer. Everything I do is design. But we have to understand what design is. Design is inseparable as a form of forms of activism. When you design something, you're rearticulating a world. And that's something that you cannot do without research and without an intelligence. And I think that that's what makes architecture so exciting, that we are the field and the profession that works through design to do things that are much bigger than design. And that is, I would say, what is, for us, the center of our practice. I think we live a world that is based on the idea that 90% is sacrificable for the sake of nothing, a tiny part of our eco-social structures. I think that basically is a design project. How do we build a world that is inclusive and that is not creating victims? It's actually much more beautiful to be in a landscape where many different forms of life can share agency. It's much nicer to live in a city where part of the population is not victimized. So I think that it's for the sake of beauty, for the sake of justice, and for the sake of actually good design, we have to work for inclusiveness. Architects, we have the capacity to work on a project that then changes the world. So we could say, give me a project and I will change the world, right? I think when you really put out there an example that things can be different, then you're already expanding the spectrum of what is possible. For us, Reggio School was that. If most schools are segregating children so that they can be educated in isolation, we said it's the opposite. Children should be exposed to the diversity of the world, and actually to a world in the making, with problems, with things that need to be fixed. And that's where education happens. And we did that with a building. And the great thing about architecture is that you do that with a building, and then with the design of a building, and then it kind of starts reproducing, and at one point it becomes a movement. I think that's the beauty of architecture, that you can do something very small, but if it somehow proves that another possibility is available, then it becomes a big thing. I don't think it's unusual now for architectural firms to be very open about the processes. And I think the ideas flow. We had long meetings with the teachers, the family and tutors of the students. The students actually come in. But not only that, I think that the difficult part was not to operate with the collectively produced ideas of all these humans, but also how do you bring the area that was around it that was highly polluted, or the histories of basically reduction of biodiversity in a place like Valdebebas in Madrid. And when you bring those voices, those histories together, then something very different comes up. I think the role of architects is not to have ideas, but to create the conditions for small collectives or large collectives to nurture ideas that somehow represent them. Well, I think basically architecture is intellectual. It doesn't mean that it's intellectualized. It's just that it's complex, and it really requires knowledge and discourse, and also be very permeable to many forms of knowledge. That leads architects to teaching, to academia, to research, to discourse making, as much as to design, innovation. And I'm very happy, for instance, to be in Columbia, because Columbia is a school of architecture that has anticipated change for decades now. And this idea that we can have a community of people that not necessarily agree on everything, but that work to really make desirable futures available is very exciting, and it's very energizing, and I would say it's very empowering. The capacity to have interlocution with others, to turn your personal concerns and engagements and connect them with those of the others, for me, it's worth the effort. So I'm very happy to be part of Columbia, and which is probably one of the most vibrant, intellectual, and kind of hands-on and engaged community in the world. I don't think schools of architecture need to teach anything. I think schools of architecture actually normally need to create the conditions for all of us to unlearn, and to then learn again through experimentation. It's not about, I would say, instruction. It's about creating the conditions for everyone to be contributed to making something that we would not even imagine before. And that, for me, is what architecture is so good at. So I would say schools of architecture often are architecture at its highest. And the time that we spend engaged with studio, with discussions, is something that we should prolong for our entire life, and kind of dying, experimenting and discussing. That's definitely what I want for myself. Transitioning itself. I love trans theory, and I've always been very much learning from people like Jack Halberstam, Paul Preciado, many people that really deeply look into transness as a cultural and political paradigm and bodily paradigm for the times we live. It's not about the origins or destination. It's what happens in the transitioning. If I had to claim what I want architecture should do, is to be transcolor, transspecies, transmaterial. Transcolor in the way that the tiny and the planetary are interconnected, and we operate making decisions and constructing in the transition and in moving from one to the other. Transmaterial because the fleshy, I love stones. I presented this project in the Venice Biennial that was claiming that the stones are alive because when you look at them at the microscope, You see stones moving with bacteria and microbes, taking things from the air and biomineralizing these things and making stone grow. So life and stone, it's inseparable. And the same we could say with many other things. I think trans is what is the now. Living and enjoying the transitioning rather than being nostalgic about a destination or an origin is what is contemporary. Well, I think we don't have to tell people what to ask. Like you, right? People just ask what is important, what is relevant. And the questions that we are all hearing is affordability, is justice, is alternatives and confrontation of violence and militarism. It's really forms of life that can be inclusive. It's a world that is constructed in diversity of forms of functioning, of bodies, of sexualities, of identities. I don't think we have to look too far. The questions that we're asking ourselves, the questions that are emerging in our groups of friends, in our activisms, in the front page of the newspapers, are the ones that are valid for architects as well.